If you only have a few variables to declare with a simple C program, you normally do all that main program file. If you have a lot of variables to declare, as is shown here, it can be difficult to see what's going on. Instead, usually you put these declarations in a separate file called a header file. We use separate files to store all these variable declarations so that these declarations don't get in the way of the code. While this seems like an unnecessary complication, it's much easier to see what's going on in your program once all the declarations are somewhere else. There, that looks much better. The separate file, called a header file, is a plain text file like any other C file, but it uses the extension .h. You use the #include directive to include this header file and all the declarations that are located inside. Keep in mind the compiler only wants to see the declarations in this file. You should never put code in a header file. So how do we get this .h file into our program? We use a thing called a #include directive. This #include directive tells the preprocessor where to find the header file that holds all your declarations. There are two different ways that you can use this #include directive. Using the #include with quotation marks around the file name is going to tell the compiler to look in the project directory for the header file. This is where you normally put your own header files that you write for the project. Using greater than, less than signs around the file name will tell the compiler to look in the compiler search path to find the include file. This is common if you use a header file that's part of the compiler installation, like math libraries or register definitions. Less common is including the header files as an absolute or relative path. Perhaps you might use this if your project has standard header files that you use for every project. Here we can see the typical use of a #include. We have two files, main.c and main.h. All of the variable declarations for main.c have been placed in the header file. We then tell the compiler to look in main.h for those declarations by using the #include directive. Because the file name main.h is in quotes, the compiler will look in the project directory for main.h. Once found, the compiler essentially copies and pastes the text of the entire file into main.c, starting at the line where it was included. The text isn't actually copied into main.c, but the end result is the same as if it did. Here we can see the main.c as the compiler sees it. You also see that if you had hundreds of variable declarations, the main.c file could get very cluttered and your code could be difficult to find.